Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, we talk about all things homesteading, homemaking, and just our journey to a slower, more simple life. Today's video is going to be a fun one. I am somebody who is very interested in herbalism and I'd love to one day actually become a herbalist, but for now I am just learning what I can. And I thought a fun and interesting video that I could do would be just going around the yard and not including the plants that I planted, but just seeing what comes up as weeds per se and just taking a look at it and showing you what can be right under our noses that is so useful and just wonderful plants that we might overlook. And just give you a little bit of information about them and what they can be used for medicinally. But before we really hop into it, I do have to go over a couple of disclaimers. One, I am not a professional herbalist by any means, and even if I was, I would always recommend for you to do a lot more of your own research. There's many things when it comes to herbalism. One, for the foraging, you want to be sure you know what you're getting because there are lookalikes of plants out there. And two, you really need to know your own personal medical history and how different things could affect it. For example, a lot of herbs can affect and interfere with certain medications, and depending on if you have any diagnosis, anything like that. And the second kind of disclaimer is, of course, I am just in the location I am in. I am in Maine, which is in the northeast of the United States. And what is around in my area and in my own yards to forage could be very different than what is in your own yards. So I would definitely encourage you to just look around and see what kinds of things you can find. I'd encourage you to perhaps buy different plant guide books. And so you can just go around, walk around your own yard or on hikes and just start learning how to identify things around you. I think it's just really cool to kind of look a little closer to all of the life that is around us, because it can be so easy to just be like, oh, that's a lawn, so it's just grass, but really, it's usually much more. And that is kind of what I'm going to show you today. So let's get started. One, and I'm sure probably everybody knows this, but it is the dandelion. If you don't have dandelions growing where you're from, please let me know, because I'm kind of currently under the impression that they are everywhere. They are my favorite flower, which is kind of funny, but they are just, you can recognize them usually by their yellow puffs, which is the flower. But do keep in mind that there are lookalikes of the yellow flower, so what you really want to use to identify it is the spiky leaves. And when they go to seed, it is very iconic. They become just these white little puff balls that you can blow and make wishes. But what you possibly might not know is the part that you are blowing when it goes to seed, the seeds are attached to those little puffs, and that is how they carry their seed to go and make more dandelions. It's really neat. But the dandelion is not only beautiful and super prolific, you'll probably never need to intentionally plant dandelions, but the entire thing is edible and very good for you. I harvested a big plant that I was let growing so that I can get to the root, but dandelions have a big tap root. And this is probably the part that you will most commonly use when you're making tincture or anything like that. But the entire plant is edible and has benefits. Dandelion is actually a very good digestive tonic, and it can be a mild laxative. So making it as a tea or making an infusion and taking some drops of that can be very beneficial for just a sluggish digestive tract, or if you're experiencing constipation. It basically just encourages optimal digestion. The next thing that I noticed a lot of in my yard is wild strawberry. And one, yes, they can produce actual strawberries that you can eat. The flowers have to be pollinated, so you can try to self-pollinate if you don't see the insects kind of going over to them that much. But the leaves of the wild strawberry plant can actually be very good for treating infection. You can also infuse it in water and use it to help oily skin, or if you got a little bit of a sunburn, rubbing it on that helps take some of the burn out. So dandelion and wild strawberries are probably pretty well known, but let's get into ones that may be a little less well known and maybe a little harder to identify. First, I want to talk about plantain, and no, I'm not talking about plantains kind of like bananas, but it is a wild plant that grows very commonly around here and has so many great benefits. So it's known for drawing toxicity out of the body, and it actually has a history of being used for blood poisoning. What I use it the most for is actually making kind of a mush, and just making that mush, you can break it down, you can chew it, or you can make a tea out of it and then put cloth in the tea and you can put it on any bug bites, stings, any other kind of skin issue you have going on, and it is great for taking the itch and the sting out and just for healing that area. It can kind of be a little tricky to spot, especially when it's not flowering, but you can tell by the wide, kind of broad leaves. Next is sorrel, and I have that growing amongst my garden, which I don't really want it growing everywhere that it's growing, but it is a great thing to have. Making an infusion of it with the leaves can be a great gargle for if you have a sore throat, you can just gargle it. And also taking some of that infusion orally, you can bring down a fever if you use it about 2 to 3 times a day. If you have a high fever, it helps to bring that fever down. And when infused in water, it can also be another great way to treat any infected skin. Pine needle, so of course from the pine tree. Pine can really help with any aches and pains that you have going on. If you have anywhere that seems to be having poor circulation, rubbing pine infusion, or even if all you have is pine essential oil, a few drops of that, just rubbing it in problem areas of the body can be really helpful. If you're experiencing cold and cough, kind of bringing that pine to a boil in a tea, even just inhaling that smell can really help kind of move things along and help make that congestion better. Next we have a goldenrod, and you might know it because a lot of people say they experience allergies from the goldenrod, but it actually does have some benefits as well. Using the flowers can really help treat urinary tract infection, prostate and kidney problems, as well as if you're experiencing heavy menstrual bleeding. Making some kind of infusion or a tincture with the flowers of the goldenrod is known to really help with those issues. The red clover, also known as the best vitamin and mineral supplement in nature, it is super rich in nutrients. It's often included in formulas for treating eczema and really great at treating lymphatic congestion. And it's known to help treat hot flashes and other symptoms of menopause. When making infusions and things with the clover, the leaves can be used, but the flowery tops really has the most potency. Nettle, what some people think of as a huge nuisance, actually has a lot of benefits. Of course, many varieties of nettle is called stinging nettle for a reason. You're going to want to harvest it with gloves because ow! But the leaf is very rich in nutrients, primarily iron and calcium. And it's really good for growing pains actually, and for people who are older for any achy joints. It's also got a lot of antihistamine, so it can be really helpful for anybody experiencing allergies. And you can commonly see it in formulas that help kind of reproductive issues. That includes PMS issues, fertility, menopause, and even issues with the prostate. Yarrow, a absolutely great antiseptic, and just has a lot of anti-inflammatory properties. So it's really good for mashing up and healing some wounds, even sprains, due to it helping bring the inflammation down. It's really good if you're experiencing really bad menstrual cramps, and it's also really useful during childbirth, but this is one that you're not going to want to use when you are pregnant and not yet ready to deliver. It also has properties that really help stop bleeding and can reduce fevers. For yarrow, you can use both the leaves and the flower of the plant. Well, that is just my little overview of some of the things that I have found just in my yard. Things that I have not had to plant that just appear. And they have really great benefits. It's sad to think that a lot of people just don't even really know what is around them. And with just a little bit of knowledge and some practice, I think a lot more of us can really start learning how to heal just from what is available to us. It cost me no money to pull up any of these wild things growing in my yard, and it's really just kind of amazing to think about that so many of these plants are just filled with things we need, and I'm sure that is all by design. Let me know if you enjoyed this kind of basic overview of talking about some of the plants that I can just find in my yard. I'd definitely be happy to talk about more plants and herbs, whether that be ones that I purposely grow or ones that may not be growing so readily in my yard but could be in yours. I am very much learning about this topic. Like I said, not a professional, not a licensed herbalist, but just somebody who this really piques my interest, and I just want to keep learning more and more. So if you like this kind of content and would like to see more in the future, please consider subscribing to join our community of like-minded folk, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye-bye!